How do we differentiate between ADHD and laziness? I think lazy is a symptom of some other issue. Depression saps your energy and you get lazy. ADHD keeps you from staying focused on boring tasks and you get distracted by funner stuff. It looks like laziness. I've had lazy periods in my life. It was always a side effect of something else. That doesn't excuse being lazy. It just shows that the person needs to focus on their actual issues and get them under control. ADHD is now being considered an impulse control problem that results from neurological differences, in which the brain cannot prioritize information properly. This results in the problems you have mentioned, take being late. For example, I start trying to leave the house a full 30 minutes before I manage to leave the house. My brain decides that I need to start a load of laundry before leaving. No, I don't. Laundry is important, but being on time is more important. But to an ADHD brain, the minute this laundry task enters your brain, it instantly becomes the most important thing, only thing you think about. Then I remember I need to leave again. But my brain decides I need to grab a water bottle on the way out. Again. Water is important, but being on time is more important, but my brain won't allow me to see that in that moment. This difficulty in decision making and prioritizing is called executive dysfunction, and it results in the issues like lateness and an apparent inability to start or to stay on task. I remember the first time I took ADHD medication and I felt like I could actually choose if I wanted to do a task or not, and I literally cried. Because my whole life people had been saying I was disorganized and lazy, but for me lazy meant I spent all day trying desperately to get this work done and wishing I was doing it and feeling horribly guilty for not getting it done and wasting time. But I was trying. And when I took medicine, I realized that when people without ADHD are saying lazy, when they mean is, I could do that easily if I wanted to, but I don't feel like it, loudly crying. The other key thing to realize is because ADHD brains are not regulating dopamine and possibly other neurotransmitters in the same way, and are thought to be low in dopamine, the ADHD brains literally constantly seeks more of the dopamine it does not have enough of. The results in dopamine-seeking behavior, like binge eating or hypofocused video game playing, doom scrolling, etc. Things that we are all susceptible but are kryptonite for ADHD minds. And importantly, the lack of dopamine results in the inability to focus on boring, non-stimulating things due to the lack of existing dopamine. So if you have enough dopamine floating around in your head, you can force yourself to focus on something boring. You just feel bored. A person with ADHD had such messed up motivation and focus chemistry in their brains that non-exciting thing literally cannot hold their attention. It becomes literally impossible to do things that do not stimulate dopamine. It takes dopamine to start. This is why people with ADHD appear to not want to do tasks, but typically when medicated they do not have this issue. If a kid is like, I can't be bothered with this homework now, I'll just do it tomorrow, that's just laziness. But when they actually sit and want to do their homework but they can't focus for more than 2 minutes no matter how hard they try, leading to consistently bad grades and/or poor conduct at school. And if it doesn't happen just once or twice but more often than not, that would be an attention deficit disorder. If that's accompanied by hyperactivity, always wanting to fidget around and do all sorts of activities that aren't homework, being unable to sit still for long, that constitutes the typical presentation of ADHD. How do we tell apart those who are just lazy? If I remember correctly, the current science around this is that there is no such thing as lazy. It is simply a term that humans have come up with to describe someone not acting as expected by other people. Edit. For example, if someone is a straight A student and then starts to get B's, C's and so on, a lot of people will simply say, "Ah, you are just being lazy. You aren't putting in the same effort like you used to." But that has nothing to do with why their grades are slipping. Saying someone is lazy is a reductionist response and so stops us from actually finding the true reason for a change in behavior, and so we cannot ever fix the problem. Humans don't just sit around and do nothing all day for fun. There is always something deeper which is causing this to happen, whether it is ADHD, anxiety, or any other form of mental health maladaptive response. Lazy people do things they want to do and avoid things they don't want to do. ADHD people struggle to do things they want to do, and often have anxiety that they're forgetting things that they should be doing. I spent half my life learning how to deal with my ADHD, being loaded with physical and mental potential, but always being viewed as falling short of that potential. It made me feel bad, even if I'd accomplished more than most others around me. When I was diagnosed with ADHD and got medicated, it was game-changing. I was able to do the normal things without effort. I was able to operate like a normal person. The medications don't do the work for you, but they removed the boat anchor I drug around with me when I tried to be successful each day. In short, if person you're judging talks regularly about the silly, fun, mundane, non-productive things they're doing, while avoiding real work, they're likely to be lazy. If they're someone who's occasionally productive, but falls short, feels bad, and regularly avoids doing silly, fun, mundane, non-productive things, so they sound like they just sat on the couch and zoned for 6 hours, then they likely have ADHD. Unmedicated ADHD people have an internal struggle to do anything, even if it's something we enjoy. When we happen to get in the zone for a particular task, we'll carry it forward for hours without being aware of anything else because we're getting happy chems from our brain while thinking we're being productive. If you're lazy and not doing your work, usually there's no guilt and you're enjoying your time. If you have executive dysfunction, common symptom in folk with ADHD, you want to do it so bad, but you just cannot. You feel the guilt. Sometimes you can't even do the things you enjoy doing. Someone with ADHD would be much happier doing the thing, recognizing it's not that hard, realizes the stress they are feeling by not doing it is much worse than the task itself, and will still be unable to do the task. If someone was lazy, they would be happy avoiding the task. After the initial decision not to do it, they won't think about it anymore at all. 1. Hyperfocus. What happens when people with ADHD focus on one thing like it's the only thing? Time flies by and you feel like a god. If you are able to focus on something you want to focus on. Point 2. Control. This is a big part of the shame, guilt, depression cycles that happens when people with ADHD want or need to do something but then find themselves distracted, doing something else, and then feel bad that they realize they messed things up and didn't finish or start the thing they wanted to or needed to start. This can become multiple messed up things. With ADHD there is no reluctance. It's a matter of, am I in control or not? Do people with ADHD get lazy? Oh hell yeah. But we deal with getting over the laziness only to find ourselves in the cockpit of a robot that's on its own mission. I need to pick up the trash in my room and take it to the dumpster. I start by collecting the trash. Realize I need a bag. Go find a bag in the garage. I see the table in my garage is cluttered and, without thinking about it, start tidying. I then find an old toy or magazine which is related to a nice memory. Suddenly I find myself on my phone looking for information on the thing. I realize I'm thirsty, so I go inside and grab some water as I head back to my room. I arrive at my room and reality comes rushing in. I didn't get a bag. My room is still trashed. The table in the garage is still messy. And I've lost 45 minutes to nothing. Cue the guilt, shame, anxiety cycle. Now it's not all bad. I personally have spent years learning to triage my distractions, and sometimes I find myself able to hyper-focus on something I need or want to do. Now that's a superpower. I sit down to work on a project, and as I start I open a browser on my computer and start researching the project I want to do. An advertisement pops up reminding me about a hobby of mine I enjoy, and before I go to search this hobby I step back from my desk and reevaluate. I'm here to do this project, not look at hobby stuff. I sit back down now feeling accomplished. Endorphin fuel for the hyper-focus. And I take that super fast ADHD brain of mine and focus it like a surgeon's needle on the task at hand. I'm flying through the research. Everything is clicking. The end is in sight and I feel in control. GIF. The last thing I want to mention is how crazy a distraction can be. I can literally be at a dinner table, talking to people about something, when I get a text from someone important to me that distracts me. I am zeroed in on the text. I don't hear the conversation. It's as if the room has faded away. I call this time hopping, since I often suddenly find myself in the future of something I was a part of. Cue the shame, guilt, anxiety. Laziness is a symptom. ADHD is a cause. If you put a person with ADHD in an fMRI scan, you will be able to see their brain acting differently than a person without ADHD. Frontal lobe specifically, if I remember correctly. How? You go get diagnosed by a psychiatrist, you can think you have ADHD. But there are literal tests that can objectively verify it. Ask me how I know. ADHD is an executive management disorder. It's not that we don't have attention to give. It's that we can't control how and when that attention is given. What even is laziness really? Is there even such a thing? You're either relaxing, or stressed, or overworked, or depressed, or tired, or overwhelmed, or anxious, or suffering from ADHD, or enjoying yourself, but I don't think there is such a thing as laziness other than a term used to shame people from experiencing any of the above I mentioned. I think a useful difference is whether or not the behavior makes the person feel good or bad. Laziness is a choice. You choose not to work and you probably feel good about it. Because if you felt bad about it, you would then work in order to feel better. Right? So if you feel bad about it, but still can't make yourself work, that's probably ADHD. Or any number of other things like depression, fatigue, or mishandled prioritization. I have ADHD and I find it fairly easy to differentiate between my own laziness, which is an occasional indulgence which I enjoy, and simply not being able to make myself do a thing. A good litmus is to sit down and try to do the thing, and just see if you can do it. If you're struggling, it's probably ADHD. I think a lot of us fixate on avoiding an accusation of laziness, wherein the lazy is something we are perceived as rather than something we are actually doing. So we try and orient our definition around when other people do or don't call us lazy. Which is silly really, because people are assholes. We also lie to ourselves about our own autonomy, because it's really upsetting to admit how little control we really have over ourselves. We pretend our inability to do something is an active choice. We rationalize deferring something unreasonably difficult with, "It's not that I can't. It's that I don't want to." Sometimes laziness is a preferable alternative narrative to disability. And we indulge in this narrative even though because it's more empowering to be lazy than disabled. My advice: indulge in laziness on purpose sometimes. Enjoy not doing something because you chose not to bother, and see how that feels. Note the difference. We can say there is no such thing as laziness. We're exhausted, overstimulated, overworked, living in lack and losing hope. We don't have to be productive and doing things all the time. I mean, sure, some folks are just lazy, but I think mostly it's used to disparage people who are invested in their own well-being and take care of themselves.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.